4 armed men breached the compound in 19 seconds. They were all down in 40. And the only thing standing between them and the Mafia boss's son was his new maid. Rebecca wasn't just a single mom looking for work. She was ex-Special Forces, and she took this job for one reason. Don Vincent Roman thought he had hired a desperate single mother to clean his son's room. He needed someone invisible after 3 attempts on 9-year-old Luca's life. What he didn't know was that Rebecca applied for the job the day after the second attack. She wasn't there to mop floors. She was there on a mission, and the security cameras were about to prove it. The first attempt looked like an accident. Luca's nanny served his afternoon milk. 20 minutes later, he was seizing on the kitchen floor, his little body rejecting a massive dose of fentanyl. The nanny, a woman employed for 5 years, swore she'd prepared it herself. She was found that night in the East River, a supposed suicide. Don Vincent Romano doubled the guard. The second attempt was a drive-by shooting. Luca was being walked to his private tutor's car when a black sedan slowed. The first bullet missed. The second hit his bodyguard in the throat. The third shattered the car window above Luca's head. The shooters were never found. Vincent pulled his son from school entirely. The mansion became a fortress. By the third attempt, paranoia was protocol. Every meal was tasted. Every outsider was patted down. Every window was bulletproof. So when Luca spiked a fever of 105 degrees, the doctors blamed a virus. But the toxicology report told a different story. Thallium, a tasteless, odorless heavy metal, slipped into his toothpaste. Someone inside the house was now poisoning him. Vincent fired the entire household staff of 15 people. He needed someone new. Someone with no connections. Someone nobody would see as a threat. That's when Rebecca's application landed. A single mother, former Army, discharged honorably, clean record, stellar references from a temp agency. She needed the live-in position desperately. In her interview, she was quiet, her eyes downcast, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She spoke of her own son, safe with her sister out of state, and her need to provide. Vincent's consigliere, Frank Russo, scanned the background report. It was flawless. Too flawless, he muttered. But Vincent saw only a solution. A woman who needed a roof over her head, who would be grateful, who would be invisible. He hired her on the spot. Rebecca moved into the servants' quarters that evening. She unpacked one small suitcase. She folded her simple gray uniforms with a precision that bordered on ritual. That first night at 3 a.m. she didn't sleep. She walked the perimeter of the mansion's first floor, her footsteps silent on the marble. She noted the blind spots in the camera coverage. She felt the weaknesses in the patrol patterns of the armed guards. She stopped outside Luca's bedroom door, listening to the boy's fitful sleep. Her expression in the dark hallway was not one of a scared new employee. It was one of grim assessment. The next morning she began her duties. She was perfectly average. She mopped, she dusted, she spoke only when spoken to. Luca, a pale, anxious shadow of a boy, watched her from doorways. He hadn't spoken to anyone but his father in weeks. On her third day, Rebecca was polishing the banister when Luca's ball bounced down the stairs and landed at her feet. She picked it up, met his gaze, and gave it a gentle, underhand toss back to him. He caught it. A flicker of something crossed his face. Not a smile, but a cessation of fear. Frank Russo watched all of this. He watched from his office on the security monitors. He saw Rebecca's efficiency, her lack of curiosity, her mechanical movements. He called the references again. A former employer, a Mrs. Abernathy, gushed about Rebecca's reliability. The temp agency manager confirmed her placement history. But Frank had been in this business for 30 years. He trusted his gut, and his gut told him this woman was a loaded gun in a linen closet. He ordered a deeper dig off the books. "I want to know what battalion she served in," he told his contact. "I want to know who her commanding officer was. I want to know what she really did." Meanwhile, Rebecca was doing her own reconnaissance. While changing Luca's bedsheets, she found a listening device tucked beneath the mattress, not one of Vincent. While cleaning the study, she observed Frank taking a call, his body language tense, his words clipped. "The timeline is moved up." She filed it away. Her mission parameters were clear, but the enemy's playbook was evolving. 2 weeks in, the pattern of the house shifted around her. Luca began following her during her chores. He'd sit on the floor, building with blocks while she cleaned. He didn't speak, but his presence was a quiet claim. One afternoon, during a thunderstorm, a clap of thunder shook the windows. Luca, terrified, didn't run to his father or his bodyguard. He ran to Rebecca, burying his face in her apron. She didn't hug him. She simply placed a steadying hand on his shoulder and said, in a calm, firm voice, "It's just noise. It can't hurt you." Vincent, witnessing this from the doorway, felt a complex knot of jealousy and relief. His son trusted this stranger. That trust was the crack in the armor, and someone was watching for it. Frank's off-the-books investigation hit a wall. The military records he received were standard issue, service years, honorable discharge, but the details of her unit were vague. His contact, a former intelligence officer, called him back with a warning. "The trail goes cold, Frank, deliberately. You didn't hire a maid. You hired a ghost." The night of the breach began like any other. Luca insisted Rebecca read him a story. She sat in the chair beside his bed, her voice a low monotone. Downstairs, Vincent and Frank were arguing. The Calibri family, their main rivals, were making aggressive moves on the waterfront. Frank urged a preemptive strike. Vincent, his focus fractured by his son's safety, hesitated. The security team was distracted, their attention split between the external threat and the internal tension. At 11:17 p.m., the power to the eastern security grid failed. Not a full blackout, just the cameras and motion sensors covering the garden and the kitchen entrance. The backup system took 90 seconds to engage. It was a professional, surgical cut. In those 90 seconds, 4 men dressed in black tactical gear, faces obscured, entered through the kitchen. They moved with coordinated silence, breaching the house in 19 seconds. Their objective was the second floor. Their target was the child's bedroom. Rebecca's head came up from the storybook. She heard the faintest scuff of a boot on the stair, her ears, trained in 1,000 hours of combat, picking out the anomaly in the house's nighttime rhythm. She looked at Luca, his eyes drooping. "Under the bed," she whispered, her voice now stripped of all meekness. "It was an order. Now, don't make a sound." The boy, sensing the shift in her, slid down and scrambled beneath the bed frame. Rebecca stood. She smoothed her gray uniform skirt. Then she stepped out into the hallway, closing Luca's door softly behind her. She stood alone under the dim sconce light, a maid facing 4 armed intruders at the top of the stairs. The lead man raised his pistol, a suppressor fitted to the barrel. He didn't see a threat. He saw an obstacle. He never got the chance to fire. Rebecca's hand shot out, not at the gun, but at the wall beside her. She ripped the fire extinguisher from its bracket. It was the first weapon she had clocked on day 1. The canister became a blur. It shattered the gunman's wrist with a sickening crack. As he screamed, she was already moving. She used his collapsing body as a shield, driving him into the second man. Her elbow found a throat. A knee found a groin. Disarm, disable, move. The third man fired. The bullet tore through the sleeve of her uniform. In the confined space, the sound was a deafening roar. Rebecca didn't flinch. She closed the distance before he could adjust his aim. Her fingers found pressure points on his neck. He dropped. The fourth man, younger, hesitated for a fatal half-second. He looked from his fallen comrades to this woman in a maid's dress, her expression utterly calm. That hesitation was all she needed. A sweeping kick took his legs out. A precise, hammer-fist strike to the temple ended the fight. From first movement to last unconscious body, 40 seconds elapsed. The hallway was silent again, save for ragged breathing. Rebecca stood among them, her own breath even. She reached down, picked up a fallen pistol, and ejected the magazine. Then she walked to the security camera at the end of the hall, the one still active, and looked directly into its lens. In his security office, Don Vincent Romano stared at the monitor, his mouth slightly open. He had watched the entire feed in stunned, disbelieving silence. He saw the violence, the efficiency, the terrifying skill. He saw the woman he hired to dust his son's furniture move like a predator. The red recording light blinked. He watched as Rebecca, on the screen, turned from the camera and walked back toward Luca's door. She paused, her hand on the knob, and looked over her shoulder one last time, not at the camera, but at the body of the lead intruder. She reached down and pulled back his balaclava. Vincent leaned closer to the screen, his blood turning to ice. He recognized the face. It was Marco, one of Frank's most trusted soldiers. The attack hadn't come from an outside rival. It had come from within his own organization. And the quiet maid in the gray uniform had known it was coming. For 5 full seconds, Don Vincent Romano did not breathe. The face on the monitor was a crack in his world, a fissure running straight through 2 decades of trust. Marco, Frank's man. The attack was an inside job, but not just any inside job. It was a coup. His consigliere, his brother, was trying to erase his bloodline. Vincent's hand, steady through 100 violent confrontations, trembled as he reached for the desk phone. He didn't call Frank. He didn't call the head of security. He pressed a single speed dial button. It rang once. "Tony," his voice was a gravelly whisper. "My study, now armed, tell no one." He rose, his mind working with a cold, surgical clarity he hadn't felt since the early wars. The woman, Rebecca, was not the threat. She was the only reason his son was still alive. That changed the entire equation. He pulled a 9mm pistol from his desk drawer, checked the magazine, and slid it into his waistband. As he moved toward the door, he glanced once more at the monitor. Rebecca had dragged the unconscious Marco into Luca's room. She was securing the other men with zip ties she'd produced from a pocket of her uniform. She was prepared. Upstairs, the hallway smelled of cordite and sweat. Rebecca finished securing the last intruder. Her heart rate was just returning to normal, a physiological control she'd mastered in the mountains of Afghanistan. She looked at Luca, who was peeking out from under the bed, his eyes enormous. "It's okay," she said, her voice deliberately soft, stripping away the warrior's edge. "They're sleeping, you're safe." "You hurt them," Luca whispered, not accusing, just observing. "I stopped them," she corrected gently. She walked over, knelt, and helped him out. "I need you to be very brave for 1 more minute. I need to ask this man a question. Can you cover your ears and count to 60 for me?" Luca nodded mutely, pressing his hands over his ears and squeezing his eyes shut. Rebecca turned to Marco, who was groaning back to consciousness. She grabbed a handful of his hair and tilted his head back. "Look at me," she said. The meek maid was gone. This was the voice of an interrogator. Marco's eyes focused, swimming with pain and confusion. He saw a woman in a maid's dress holding him with a grip that felt like steel. "Frank sent you," she stated, not asked. "Go to hell," Marco spat. Rebecca's free hand moved not to hit him but to his injured wrist. She applied precise, excruciating pressure to the broken bones. Marco's scream was muffled against the carpet. "The boy is counting," Rebecca said calmly. "He gets to 60. You have 50 seconds left of silence. Was it just the child, or was the Don also a target tonight?" Sweat poured down Marco's face. "Just the kid," he gasped. "Just the kid," Frank said. Without the air, Vincent would break. The captains would fold. The Calibri family would back his play for the territory. The poisonings, the shooting. Frank, all Frank. The nanny was his mistress. The shooter was a Calibri guy on Frank's payroll. The thallium, he had access to everything. Rebecca released the pressure. "Who else inside is with him?" Before Marco could answer, the door clicked open. Vincent stood there with Tony, his most loyal captain, flanking him. Tony took in the scene. 4 armed men trussed up on the floor, a maid kneeling calmly beside one, and his hand went to his gun. "Stand down, Tony," Vincent said, his eyes locked on Rebecca. "She's with us." Vincent crossed the room. He looked at his son, who had reached 60 and was peeking through his fingers. "Papa." "Go with Tony, son, just for a minute. I need to talk to Rebecca." His voice was gentle but brooked no argument. Tony, still bewildered, shepherded Luca into the adjacent sitting room. Vincent crouched down beside Marco, his face inches from his traitorous soldier. "Hello, Marco." The quiet fury in those two words was more terrifying than any shout. "Boss, I'm sorry, he made me. He has my family." "Where is Frank now?" "In his office, waiting for my call. The plan was we take the kid, make it look like the Calibris snatched him. You'd go to war, it would weaken you. In the chaos, Frank would make his move." Vincent stood up. The puzzle pieces snapped together with devastating clarity. The failed attempts weren't failures. They were pressure. They were designed to make Vincent paranoid, unstable, distracted from the business. They were the prelude to this final, definitive strike. He looked at Rebecca. "You knew." "I suspected," she corrected, standing. "The security flaw that let them in was too specific. It required internal knowledge. Frank opposed my hearing. He was the only one with the access and motive to orchestrate the previous attempts. The logic chain pointed to him." "Who are you?" Vincent asked, the question hanging in the bloody air. "My name is Rebecca Vale. I was a team leader with the 75th Ranger Regiment, attached to Joint Special Operations Command for 8 years. I was hired by your late wife's sister, Sophia, to protect your son. She believed the threats were internal. She was right." Vincent staggered as if struck. Sophia, Maria's sister. She had never approved of his life, had cut ties years ago. She had more money than God and a righteous fury to match. She had seen what he could not. "Why the charade? Why not just tell me?" "Because you would have refused. And because if the threat was your right-hand man, telling you would have put Luca in greater danger. I needed to be invisible to find the truth." Rebecca's gaze was unflinching. "My mission was to identify and neutralize the threat to Luca Romano. The threat is Frank Russo. The neutralization is your decision." Downstairs, Frank Russo checked his watch for the fourth time. 11:43. Marco was 26 minutes late to check in. The silence from the East Wing was absolute. No alarms, no gunfire. Something was wrong. He left his office and walked casually toward the security room. The guard at the door, a young kid named Gio, nodded. "Anything to report, Gio?" "Quiet night, Mr. Russo." Frank peered in. The bank of monitors showed empty hallways, sleeping gardens. The feed for the second-floor hallway outside Luca's room was black. "What happened to camera 7? "Grid glitch, sir. Backup came online, but the feed's frozen. Tech is coming in the morning." A glitch on the exact night of the operation. Frank's gut, which had served him so well, twisted into a knot. This wasn't a glitch. This was a counter-operation. He forced a smile. "Keep sharp." He walked away, his mind racing. He needed to know what was in that hallway. He needed to find Vincent. Back in Luca's room, Vincent was making calculations at warlord speed. Frank would be getting nervous. He'd have fallback plans. He'd have other men inside. "Tony," Vincent called out. Tony re-entered, holding Luca's hand. "Take Marco and the others down to the old wine cellar. Keep them alive and quiet. Use men you trust with your life. No one else. Then sweep the house. I want every soldier loyal to Frank identified and isolated." "What do I tell people?" Tony asked. "Tell them we caught external intruders. Tell them we're on lockdown. Tell them nothing about Frank. Go." As Tony and a handful of hand-picked men began clearing the hallway, Vincent turned back to Rebecca. "You stay with Luca. You are his shadow. If anyone tries to take him, you have my authority to end them." Rebecca gave a single sharp nod. "Understood." "And Rebecca, thank you." She didn't smile. "The mission isn't over, Don Romano. Frank knows something has gone wrong. He will pivot. He will have a contingency target." "What target?" Before she could answer, Vincent's phone buzzed. It was Frank. Vincent held up a finger to Rebecca and answered, his voice perfectly normal. "Frank, what is it?" "Just checking in, Vincent. All quiet on my end. You hear anything unusual?" "Not a thing. Why?" "A feeling. You know me. After the third attempt, I don't sleep well. I think we should move the boy just for a few nights to the safe house in Jersey." Vincent's blood ran cold. The Jersey safe house was a location only he and Frank knew. It was the perfect place to finish the job. "That's not necessary," Vincent said, his tone easy. "Security is tight. Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning." He hung up. The facade crumbled from his face. "He just tried to get me to move Luca to an isolated location." "He's confirming his failure," Rebecca said. "He knows the op is compromised. He's probing your reaction. Your normal tone was a mistake. He now knows you know." As if on cue, the lights throughout the mansion flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. The backup generators should have kicked in instantly. They didn't. The house was running on emergency battery-powered strips along the baseboards, casting long, eerie shadows. Frank had cut the power. He was making his move. Vincent's phone lit up with a text from Tony down in the cellar. "Generator room is sabotaged. Frank's men are missing from their posts. He's mobilizing." Then a new text from an unknown number. Vincent opened it. It was a photo taken through a window. It showed Maria, Vincent's wife, sitting in the solarium reading by candlelight, unaware she was being watched. The message below read, "A trade, the boy for the wife. You have 15 minutes to bring him to the front gate, or I send Maria to you in pieces." The pivot, the contingency target. Frank wasn't just a trader, he was a strategist. He had flanked them. He had Maria. Vincent showed the phone to Rebecca. Her analytical calm didn't falter. "He's in the gardens. He has at least one sniper or photographer with him. He's trying to force you into the open, into a panic move. I have to get to her. If you run out there, you die. Luca dies, Maria dies. He's controlling the board." "What's your play, soldier?" Vincent snarled, desperation cracking his voice. Rebecca looked at Luca, who was clinging to her uniform in the dim light. She looked at the photo of the unsuspecting Maria. She had been hired to protect the child. The parameters of her mission were clear, but Frank had just rewritten the rules of engagement. "He expects you to act like a desperate husband and father," she said, her voice low and steady. "He expects chaos, so we give him order, we give him precision." She met Vincent's eyes. "You will call him, you will agree to the trade, you will buy me 12 minutes. "To do what?" "What I was trained to do," Rebecca said. She knelt in front of Luca. "Luca, I need you to be the bravest boy in the world again. I need you to go with your dad and do exactly what he says. Can you do that?" Luca nodded, his small jaw set with a mimicry of her determination. "Are you going to save Mama?" "Yes," Rebecca said, and for the first time Vincent saw a flicker of something personal in her eyes. It wasn't just duty, it was a promise. She stood and addressed Vincent. "Call him, agree, stall. Tell him it will take time to get Luca ready, that the boy is terrified. Keep him on the phone, sound defeated. He needs to believe he's won." "And you?" Rebecca was already moving to the window. She opened it, letting in the cold night air. She stripped off her gray uniform dress, revealing a dark, form-fitting tactical undersuit beneath it. She pulled her hair back into a tighter knot. From a hidden compartment in her small suitcase, she retrieved a compact handgun, a knife, and a pair of night vision goggles. "I'm going gardening," she said, her silhouette framed in the window. "When you hear the signal, bring every loyal man you have to the solarium." "What's the signal?" Vincent asked. Rebecca didn't answer. She simply slipped out the window and onto the narrow ledge outside, vanishing into the darkness like a ghost. Vincent stood alone in the dark room with his son. He looked at the phone, at the photo of his wife. He had built an empire on strength, but tonight, his family's survival depended on the skill of a stranger he'd hired to clean toilets. He took a deep, shuddering breath and dialed Frank's number. The phone rang once, twice. Frank answered, his voice slick with false concern. "Vincent, what's wrong?" "You win, Frank," Vincent said, pouring every ounce of broken despair he could muster into the words. "Just don't hurt her. I'll bring the boy, just don't hurt my wife. Frank Russell's voice on the phone was a study in false sympathy. I'm sorry it came to this, Vincent. You lost your edge. The family needs strength. Just let Maria go, Vincent pleaded, the act of defeat coming easier than he expected. Every fiber of his being screamed to threaten, to promise violence. Instead, he made his voice crack. He's just a boy, Frank. He's scared. It's taking time to calm him down. You have 12 minutes, Vincent. The clock started when you called. Frank's tone hardened. Don't make me send your wife home in a bag. The line went dead. Vincent looked at the phone, his face a stone mask of hatred. He had 12 minutes. He had to trust the stranger on the ledge. Outside, Rebecca moved. The mansion's outer wall was rough-cut stone, offering just enough purchase. She descended like a shadow, her night vision goggles painting the world in shades of green. The gardens below were not empty. Frank had positioned lookouts. She counted 3, one by the fountain, one in the gazebo, one packing near the solarium's east door. Amateurs playing soldier. They were watching the house, not the walls. She dropped the last 10 feet, landing in a soft crouch behind a boxwood hedge. The man by the fountain was 20 yards away, his back to her, smoking a cigarette. Rebecca closed the distance in silence. The only sound was the faint rustle of leaves. Her arm snaked around his throat, applying pressure to the carotid artery. He slumped without a sound. She caught his rifle before it clattered and laid him down. One down. She moved to the gazebo. This one was smarter, more alert. He held his weapon at the ready, scanning the tree line. Rebecca didn't approach directly. She picked up a small stone and tossed it into the bushes 10 feet to his left. His head snapped toward the sound. That was all she needed. She came from his blind side, a swift, brutal strike to the base of his skull with the butt of her pistol. He dropped. 2 down. The third, by the solarium, was the problem. He was positioned in a pool of shadow, but he had a clear line of sight to the solarium's glass doors. Inside, Rebecca could see Maria's silhouette and the larger shape of a guard standing behind her chair. A second guard was visible near the interior door. Taking out the exterior guard risked alerting the men inside. She needed a diversion. Her eyes scanned the garden, the fountain. She backtracked to the first guard, retrieved a grenade from his belt, a flashbang, not fragmentation, and pulled the pin. She counted to 2 in her head and threw it in a high arc toward the far side of the fountain. The explosion of light and sound was catastrophic in the quiet night. The exterior guard whirled, his weapon coming up. Inside the solarium, both guards turned toward the noise. In that split second of distraction, Rebecca was a blur. She covered the ground, came up behind the exterior guard, and snapped his neck with a sharp, clinical twist. She caught his body, lowering it quietly. 3 down. She was at the solarium's French doors. Through the glass, she saw the guard behind Maria recovering, barking into a radio. The other guard was moving toward the doors to investigate. Rebecca didn't have time for stealth. She raised her pistol and fired twice through the glass. The first bullet took the approaching guard in the throat. The second hit the guard behind Maria in the shoulder, spinning him around. Rebecca kicked the shattered door open and entered. Maria screamed. The wounded guard was fumbling for his weapon with his good hand. Rebecca shot him again, center mass. He collapsed. Maria Romano, your husband sent me. We have to move now. Maria, her face pale with terror, stared at the dead men, then at this dark-clad woman who had appeared from the night. Who are you? Luca's nanny, come on. As Rebecca helped Maria up, she spotted the radio on the floor crackling. Frank's voice, tight with fury, came through. Report, what was that explosion? Rebecca picked up the radio. She keyed the mic and in a panicked, male-sounding grunt groaned, fountain tripwire, we're checking. Then let the transmission fall silent. It might buy 30 seconds of confusion. She pulled Maria toward the broken door. We're going to the tree line. Run when I say. But as they stepped into the garden, a spotlight from the roof of the carriage house snapped on, pinning them in its blinding beam. A voice, amplified by a bullhorn, echoed across the grounds. It was Frank. He wasn't in the garden. He was above them, commanding the high ground. "Very impressive, Miss Vale, or should I call you Captain Vale? I should have dug deeper. 75th Rangers, JSOC. Quite the resume for a housekeeper." Rebecca shoved Maria behind a stone planter just as a sniper's bullet chipped the marble where she'd been standing. Frank had more men. He'd been waiting for her. "You made one mistake, Rebecca," Frank's voice boomed. "You showed your hand to save the wife, a sentimental move. Now I have you, and Vincent will come for you both. He's out of time." Inside the mansion, Vincent heard the bullhorn, Frank's voice. He was on the carriage house roof. The signal hadn't come. Rebecca and Maria were exposed. The 12 minutes were up. He looked at Luca. "Stay behind me, no matter what." He keyed his own radio. "Tony, all loyal men converge on the carriage house. Frank is on the roof. He has Maria and Rebecca pinned in the solarium garden. We go now." He broke from the cover of the mansion, holding Luca close, moving toward the garden. It was a desperate, open run, but Frank's attention was on the garden below. On the roof, Frank watched through binoculars. He saw Vincent running with the boy. Perfect. He spoke to the sniper beside him. "Take the shot, just wound him. I want him to watch." The sniper adjusted his aim. He exhaled, his finger tightening on the trigger. In the garden, Rebecca calculated. The spotlight was her biggest problem. It was mounted on the roof's edge. She still had the flashbang. She pulled the pin, counted, and threw it not toward the roof, but toward the power transformer on the side of the carriage house. The flashbang detonated against the transformer box. There was a shower of sparks, a loud pop, and the spotlight died, plunging the garden back into near darkness. The sudden loss of light ruined the sniper's shot. His bullet went wide, kicking up dirt 10 feet from Vincent. "Now, Maria, run to the tree line, go," Rebecca shouted. Maria stumbled forward, racing for the dark cover of the oaks. Rebecca provided covering fire, 3 rapid shots toward the roof to keep heads down. Vincent and Luca reached the cover of the solarium's outer wall. Tony and a handful of men were advancing from the other side, trading fire with Frank's remaining ground forces. Frank on the roof snarled in frustration. His clean, strategic coup was devolving into a messy firefight. He keyed his own radio. "Fall back to the secondary position. Initiate the burn." Across the estate, small, pre-placed incendiary devices ignited. They weren't meant to destroy the house, but to create chaos. Fire erupted in the garage, the guest house, the stables. Alarms blared. The night was painted in flickering orange. Vincent saw the fires. Frank was trying to force them to scatter, to divide their forces. He grabbed Tony. "Forget the fires. Get to the carriage house. Take the roof." Rebecca, seeing the distraction for what it was, changed her plan. She wasn't going to wait for a siege. She sprinted for the carriage house wall. It was brick, with thick ivy covering it. She holstered her pistol and began to climb, using the ivy like a ladder. On the roof, Frank and his sniper were preparing to retreat down the far side. They didn't see the dark figure rising over the roof's edge behind them. Rebecca pulled herself up, silent. The sniper was packing his rifle. Frank had his back to her, speaking into his phone. "Yes, the asset is compromised. The Vale woman is here. You need to move now. The package is still the priority." The package, Luca. Frank wasn't just trying to kill Vincent. He was trying to hand the boy over to someone, the Calibri family or someone else. The sniper turned and saw her. He fumbled for his sidearm. Rebecca was faster, 2 shots. The sniper fell. Frank spun, phone dropping from his hand. He raised his own pistol, but Rebecca was already moving. A kick sent the gun flying from his hand. He was an older man, a strategist, not a frontline fighter. He backed up, hands raised. "It's over, Frank," Rebecca said, her voice cold. Frank smiled, a ghastly expression in the firelight. "You think this is about territory, about being the boss. You're as naive as Vincent." He nodded toward the burning estate. This is a distraction. The real play happened 20 minutes ago. A cold dread settled in Rebecca's stomach. What play? The boy's medicine, the thallium. It wasn't just to make him sick. It was to make him traceable. A radioactive isotope tag, Rebecca. They can track him anywhere. And while you've been playing hero in the garden, a professional extraction team just breached the east wing from the sewer line. They have the boy. Rebecca's blood ran cold. She looked toward the mansion. Vincent was nowhere in sight. The gunfire had shifted. It was coming from inside the house now. Frank had never wanted to trade Maria for Luca. He wanted to draw every protector away from the boy. The entire night, the coup, the siege, the hostage situation was one giant feint. Who? She demanded, grabbing Frank by his collar. Not the Calibris, Frank gasped, his smile widening. This is bigger, this is corporate, biotech. The boy's unique genetic marker, his mother's side, they've wanted a sample for years. Vincent would never allow it, so they paid me $100 million to deliver the child alive. The revelation was a gut punch. The attempts weren't to kill Luca. They were to weaken him, to hospitalize him, to make him accessible for testing. The final extraction was always the plan. Rebecca shoved Frank to the roof deck. "Tony, get up here, secure him," she yelled into her radio. She didn't wait for a response. She turned and sprinted for the roof's edge, leaping onto a lower section of the mansion's roof. She had to get back inside. She had to find Luca. The mission had just catastrophically changed. She wasn't just protecting a boy from a mob war. She was rescuing him from something far more powerful, more ruthless, and utterly invisible. As she crashed through a skylight into the attic, the sound of controlled, professional gunfire echoed from the floors below. This wasn't the ragged report of mob weapons. This was the precise, three-round bursts of a military-trained team. Frank had told the truth. The extraction team was here, and they had Luca. The gunfire from below was methodical, suppressed rifles moving in a bounding Overwatch pattern. This wasn't a mob hit. This was a military extraction, and they were clearing the house to their exit point. Rebecca moved through the attic's darkness like a wraith. She could hear them, 4, maybe 5 men, communicating with hand signals and clipped radio codes. They were professionals, but they were also on a clock, moving fast. She found the attic access hatch, lifted it silently, and dropped into the third-floor hallway. Below on the second floor, Vincent Romano was in a frenzy. He had heard the new gunfire, the professional cadence of it, and knew Frank's final taunt was true. He'd raced back into the mansion, Tony at his side, only to find 2 of his men dead in the hallway outside the empty safe room. Luca was gone. The extraction team had come up through the basement, through a tunnel Frank had commissioned months ago for emergency evacuations. Vincent picked up a fallen assault rifle, his hands shaking with a rage so pure it felt like clarity. "Find my son," he roared at Tony. "Tear this house apart." Upstairs, Rebecca was tracking. She followed the sound, not of gunfire, but of movement, the faint rustle of gear, the squeak of a boot on polished wood. They were heading for the service staircase at the back of the house, the fastest route to the ground and a waiting vehicle. They had Luca. She could hear a child's muffled cry, swiftly silenced. She reached the top of the service stairs. Below, she saw a flash of black tactical gear, one rear guard covering their descent. Rebecca didn't fire. She vaulted over the railing, dropping directly onto the man. They hit the landing in a tangle of limbs. A short, brutal struggle ended with the man's neck broken. She took his rifle, his spare magazines, and his comms earpiece. She put the earpiece in. A voice, calm and technical, was speaking. "Alpha, this is Bravo. Package is secure. Moving to extraction point Charlie. 1 minute, clear the path." Rebecca keyed the mic, mimicking the flat tone. "Bravo, Alpha. Path is clear. Proceeding." She took the stairs 3 at a time. At the bottom, a door led to the old conservatory, a glass-walled room connected to the garage. Extraction point Charlie. She could see shadows moving inside the conservatory. 4 men, one holding a small, struggling form, Luca. Rebecca didn't have a clean shot. Luca was in the way. She needed to change the geometry. She saw the garage door mechanism on the wall beside her. The team would be loading into an armored vehicle. She raised her stolen rifle and fired a burst into the mechanism. Sparks flew. With a shriek of shearing metal, the main garage door lurched and then slammed down, crashing onto the concrete driveway, sealing the main exit. Chaos inside the conservatory. The team leader barked orders. Alternate exit, side garden now. They burst out of the conservatory's side door into the walled garden. Rebecca was already moving parallel to them, along the inside of the mansion. She reached a window, smashed it, and brought her rifle up. One of the rear guards turned. She shot him twice. He fell. 3 left. The team leader, a man holding Luca, and a point man. They were heading for the eastern wall, where a ladder was already in place. They were going over. Vincent and Tony erupted from the mansion's kitchen door into the same garden, catching the team in a crossfire between Rebecca's position and their own. The point man went down under Vincent's furious barrage. The team leader shoved the man holding Luca toward the wall. "Go, get him over. That's all that matters." The remaining operative, with Luca under his arm like a football, scrambled up the ladder. The team leader turned, laying down suppressing fire at Vincent and Tony, pinning them behind stone planters. Rebecca had a clear line on the team leader. She took it, a single shot to the head. He dropped. But the operative with Luca was at the top of the wall. In seconds, he'd be gone into the waiting vehicle on the other side. Rebecca sprinted across the open garden. A bullet from somewhere grazed her arm. She ignored it. She reached the base of the ladder as the operative dropped over the other side. She climbed. At the top, she saw a black, nondescript van, its side door open. The operative was shoving Luca inside. Rebecca didn't hesitate. She jumped from the top of the wall, a drop of 10 feet, landing on the van's roof with a metallic crash. The driver, startled, hit the gas. The van lurched forward. Rebecca slid, grabbed the roof rack, and held on. She swung her body down, kicked through the passenger window, and emptied half a magazine into the front seat. The van swerved violently and smashed into a tree. Silence. Rebecca dropped to the ground, wrenched the side door open. The operative inside was dazed, reaching for his weapon. She shot him. Then she saw Luca, curled in a ball, terrified but unharmed. "It's me, Luca. It's Rebecca. Look at me." The boy's eyes focused. He launched himself into her arms, sobbing. Vincent and Tony came over the wall, weapons raised. They saw the scene, the wrecked van, the dead operatives, Rebecca holding Luca. Vincent ran forward, taking his son from her, clutching him fiercely. For a moment, the mighty Don Romano wept. When he looked up at Rebecca, his face was a map of gratitude and awe. "You brought him back." "The mission isn't complete," Rebecca said, her voice all business. She turned to the dead operative in the van and began searching him. No identification, but she found a small, sleek electronic device, a biometric tracker. She activated it. A single word glowed on the screen: Aurora. She showed it to Vincent. Frank said, "Biotech. This is them, Aurora Biogenetic Solutions. They're a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical research firm. They didn't want to kill Luca. They wanted to own him. His unique genetics from Maria's side of the family, they're a gold mine." Vincent's expression darkened. "So this doesn't end. They'll just send another team." "Not if we send a message they can't ignore," Rebecca said. She looked at the device, then at Vincent. "You have resources. I have skills. We find out who at Aurora gave the order, and we make an example." 3 days later, the Romano estate was quiet, but the atmosphere had changed. The traitors were purged. Frank Russo, broken and awaiting a fate worse than death in Vincent's basement, had given up everything he knew: contacts, account numbers, the name of the Aurora executive who had funded the operation. Rebecca stood in Vincent's study, no longer in a maid's uniform but in dark, practical clothing. A dossier was open on the desk. "His name is Dr. Alastair Finch," she said, "head of proprietary research at Aurora. He's the one who authorized the contract with Frank. He's attending a private biomedical conference in Zurich next week." Vincent nodded. "And you have a plan?" "A surgical one. We don't burn down his company. We burn down his life's work. We make it clear that touching Luca Romano is a career-ending and life-ending proposition." A week after that, in a secure hotel suite in Zurich, Dr. Alastair Finch returned from a conference dinner to find his laptop gone. In its place was a single sheet of paper. It contained a list: every illegal human trial Aurora had run in the last 5 years, every bribed official, every covered-up death. At the bottom, a handwritten note: "The Romano family sends its regards. Your next project will be your last. The boy is under our protection. Look for him again." And this list goes to every major news outlet and regulatory agency in the world. Attached to the paper was a photograph, taken that night in his hotel room without his knowledge. It showed him sleeping. The message was received. The Aurora board, terrified of exposure, forced Finch's immediate resignation and scrubbed the entire Special Acquisitions department. The contract on Luca Romano was terminated permanently. Back in New York, the balance of power had shifted. Vincent Romano had not just survived a coup, he had uncovered a deeper, more insidious enemy and annihilated its threat without a shot being fired. His reputation soared. The Calibri family, seeing the ruthless efficiency with which he had handled Frank and the external threat, sued for peace on favorable terms. But the biggest change was in the house itself. Luca, once a ghost of a boy, began to laugh again. He played in the gardens. He went back to lessons, with Rebecca often sitting in the room, a silent, watchful presence. Maria, forever grateful, treated Rebecca as a sister. And Vincent offered her anything: a mansion of her own, a blank check. Rebecca refused it all. "I was hired to do a job, the job is done, the threat is neutralized." "Then stay," Vincent said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. They stood in the garden watching Luca chase fireflies. "Not as a soldier, as family. Luca needs you. We need you." Rebecca looked at the boy, his face lit with a joy she had helped restore. She thought of her own son, safe with her sister, a life she had put on hold. She could go back to that now. Her mission was over. But as she watched Luca run up to her, holding out a captured firefly in his cupped hands for her to see, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: a sense of place. "I'll stay," she said quietly, "for now." Vincent nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders. He wasn't just gaining a protector, he was gaining a conscience, a compass. The final surprise came a month later. A sleek, unmarked helicopter settled on the estate's lawn. A man in a sharp suit emerged, flanked by two serious-looking individuals. He asked for Rebecca. Vincent, tense, stood beside her as she walked out to meet them. The man nodded respectfully. "Captain Vale, the benefactor who initially hired you has been apprised of the situation's resolution. She is satisfied. Your back pay, plus a substantial bonus for exceeding parameters, has been deposited." He handed her a tablet showing a bank balance with more zeros than she could count. Additionally, given the demonstrated continued threat environment, the benefactor has authorized an ongoing retainer. Should you choose to accept, you would remain as the child's primary security detail, with full autonomy and resources. The benefactor, Sophia, Maria's sister, she wasn't just paying for a job, she was funding a permanent solution. Rebecca looked at Vincent, then back at the man. "My terms are non-negotiable. I report only to the family in this house. My loyalty is to the child, not to an external contract." The man smiled slightly. "Those were the exact terms she predicted you would demand. They are accepted." He handed her a sealed envelope, a personal note. Rebecca opened it. Inside, in elegant script, were just a few words: Thank you for giving me back my nephew. Keep him safe. S. The helicopter departed. Rebecca stood on the lawn, the envelope in her hand, the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. She was no longer a homeless single mother. She was no longer just an ex-soldier for hire. She was Rebecca Vale, guardian of the Romano heir, a member of the most powerful crime family in the city and the most dangerous maid in the world. She turned and walked back to the mansion, where Luca waited at the door, smiling. Her war for now was over, but her watch had just begun. In the end, the Romano family was not just saved, it was transformed. Don Vincent Romano learned that his most powerful weapon wasn't fear, but loyalty. Loyalty earned by a woman who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Luca found not just a protector, but a guardian who taught him that strength could be quiet and safety could look like kindness. The mansion, once a fortress of paranoia, became a home again. But the implications ripple far beyond one family's walls. Frank Russo's betrayal revealed a terrifying truth. The old world of territorial gang wars is being infiltrated by a new world of corporate predation. Aurora Biogenetic Solutions didn't want money or territory. They wanted intellectual property, written in a child's DNA. The threat wasn't a bullet from a rival, but a contract from a boardroom. In the 21st century, the most dangerous enemies wear suits, not ski masks. Rebecca Vale represents another seismic shift, the erasure of the line between the battlefield and the home front. Her real-world counterparts, female special operations veterans, cultural support team operators, and elite executive protection specialists, are increasingly finding roles in high-stakes private security. They offer a strategic advantage precisely because they defy expectation. The unassuming nanny, the quiet personal assistant, the efficient maid. In a world looking for obvious threats, the perfect protector is the one nobody sees coming. So the lingering question is what happened to the Romanos. It's how many other Rebecca Vales are out there right now, living in plain sight. How many seemingly ordinary people in our cities are, in fact, highly trained guardians watching over a secret, a person, or a truth too valuable to lose. The next time you pass a quiet woman pushing a stroller or a polite man reading a paper in a cafe, consider the possibility. You might be looking at a last line of defense in a war you never knew was being fought. The story of the Mafia boss and his soldier maid is a reminder that power is changing hands and safety is being redefined. It's no longer just about the biggest gun or the tallest wall. It's about the sharpest mind, the most disciplined heart, and the willingness to stand in the shadows so others can live in the light. If you found yourself pulled into this world of hidden protectors and secret wars, there are countless more stories waiting to be told. For deep dives into the real history of female special forces, the shadowy world of executive protection, and the untold narratives that shape our world from the edges, make sure to subscribe. The most compelling truths are often hiding in the last place you'd think to look.